A poor girl captured the attention of a billionaire who decided to choose her for a social experiment, but what she did next surprised everyone. Before we dive into this incredible story, leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from and enjoy the ride. Emily Hart was barely scraping by, working 2 jobs just to make rent in a tiny studio apartment. She had dreams of a better life, but every day felt like a battle. One rainy afternoon, as she was rushing to her second job, she slipped into an alley to avoid the downpour. That's when she noticed him, a man in a tailored suit, looking out of place as he fumbled with his phone. "Excuse me, are you lost?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. The man, Jonathan Blake, turned to her with a faint smile, but there was a glint of something deeper in his eyes. "No, just observing," he replied mysteriously. Emily shrugged it off and continued on her way, unaware that Jonathan was actually a billionaire on a mission. He was conducting a social experiment, testing how people would react when presented with someone from a different social class. The following day, Emily found herself in the same alley, a bit lost in her thoughts, when she spotted Jonathan again. This time, he approached her. "Would you be interested in a quick chat? I promise it won't take long," he said, his voice smooth yet inviting. Intrigued and slightly wary, Emily agreed. After all, she had nothing to lose. As they talked, Jonathan learned about her struggles and ambitions. He shared snippets of his life, carefully crafting a narrative that made him seem relatable, but he held back essential truths. The more they conversed, the more he was drawn to her authenticity, her resilience in the face of adversity. Emily, in turn, found herself captivated by this enigmatic stranger who seemed to understand her in ways few others did. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became a regular occurrence. Jonathan would casually bump into Emily in the alley, and soon their conversations evolved from small talk to deep discussions about dreams, fears, and life choices. Emily began to feel a connection to Jonathan that she couldn't quite explain, and unbeknownst to her, he was falling for her too. But Jonathan's experiment had a ticking clock. He needed to reveal his true identity and the purpose behind his interest in Emily before things went too far. Yet, the thought of losing her terrified him. What if she rejected him, not just for the truth of his wealth, but for the deception he had woven around their relationship? Then came the day Jonathan knew he had to make a choice. As they met in the alley once more, the weight of his secret pressed heavily on him. He could either continue pretending to be an ordinary guy who understood her struggles, or reveal his true self and risk everything. "Emily," he started, his voice shaking slightly, "there's something important I need to tell you." Her eyes widened as she sensed the seriousness of the moment. Would she understand? Would she forgive him for the deception? Or would this be the end of the connection they had built together? With each heartbeat echoing in the silence of the alley, Jonathan prepared to change both their lives forever. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, and take a moment to leave a comment telling me what you thought so far. "Emily," he started, his voice shaking slightly, "there's something important I need to tell you." Her eyes widened as she sensed the seriousness of the moment. The air around them felt charged, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for the truth to spill out. "I've enjoyed every moment we've spent together, and I've come to care about you more than I ever expected." She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, she just gazed at him, her heart pounding in her chest, a mix of hope and dread flickering in her eyes. "I'm not who you think I am," Jonathan continued, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I'm not just some guy working a regular job. I'm a billionaire, and this was part of an experiment. I wanted to see how people would react to someone from a different walk of life." Silence enveloped them as Emily processed his words. The revelation struck her like a bolt of lightning. All those moments shared, the laughter, the understanding, it had all been part of a social experiment? Shock coursed through her veins, and she felt a rush of betrayal. How could he do this to her? "Emily," he pleaded, "please let me explain. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was drawn to you, your spirit, your tenacity. I've been living in a bubble, shielded from reality, and you've opened my eyes to things I've never seen before." The hurt in her eyes was palpable, and Jonathan could see the walls beginning to build around her heart. "You think this is just a game to me? It's not. I want to be with you, not because of the experiment, but because I care for you." The desperation in his voice was evident, and he took a step closer, hoping to bridge the gap that had suddenly formed between them. Emily shook her head, her thoughts racing. "You lied to me, Jonathan. I don't know if I can trust you now." The vulnerability in her voice cut through him like a knife. He had crossed a line, and he knew it. "I know I messed up," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I promise you, my feelings for you are real. I didn't expect to fall in love with you, and that's why I'm standing here, risking everything. I want to change, to be better. I want to show you the world beyond what you know, not just as a billionaire, but as someone who sees the beauty in struggle." The tears welled up in her eyes. "You can't just sweep this under the rug, Jonathan. I'm not some experiment you can walk away from once you've satisfied your curiosity." Her voice was firm, laced with hurt, and it made Jonathan's heart ache. "I don't want to walk away," he insisted. "I want to help you. I want to support your dreams, not as a billionaire, but as someone who believes in you." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back, creating a chasm between them that felt insurmountable. "Support my dreams?" she scoffed, anger bubbling to the surface. "You mean buy my way into them? That's not what I need, Jonathan. I need someone who believes in me for who I am, not what I can be with your money." He reached for her hand, but she pulled back, creating a chasm between them that felt insurmountable. "Support my dreams?" she scoffed, anger bubbling to the surface. "You mean buy my way into them? That's not what I need, Jonathan. I need someone who believes in me for who I am, not what I can be with your money." Jonathan felt the weight of her words. She was right. He had entered her life with grand ideas, but he had failed to see the person she truly was. All the money in the world wouldn't fix the breach caused by his deception. "I want to be that person. Let me prove it to you," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "Prove it?" Emily echoed, her voice trembling. "How can I believe anything you say now? You've already shown me who you really are, the man who hides behind a facade." Jonathan's heart sank. He had wanted to escape the gilded cage of his wealth, but instead he had just built another one around Emily. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back," he vowed, determination igniting within him. "Give me a chance to show you the world, not as a billionaire, but as your partner." Emily's expression softened slightly, but the hurt was still there, raw and fresh. "You have to understand, Jonathan, this isn't easy for me. I can't just forget everything. I need time to think." He nodded, knowing he had to respect her space. "I'll give you as much time as you need, but please know that I'm here, willing to fight for us. I won't give up on you or on what we could be together." As he stepped back, watching Emily process his words, he felt a sense of hopelessness wash over him. He had opened a door, but it was up to her to decide whether to walk through it or leave it closed forever. The alley felt colder now, a stark reminder of the walls that had been built between the two of them. The bustling city sounds faded into the background, and all that remained was the tension hanging in the air between them. Days passed, and Emily found herself lost in thought. She replayed their conversation over and over, each time feeling the sting of betrayal mixed with the warmth of the moments they had shared. Jonathan had been a light in her life, pulling her from the shadows for just a moment. But now that light felt tainted, and doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Was it possible for someone like him to truly care for someone like her? Meanwhile, Jonathan stayed close, respecting her need for space, while still finding ways to show her that he was serious about making amends. He would often leave little notes near the park bench where she spent her afternoons, scribbled words of encouragement or reminders of shared memories that once brought them joy. Each note was a silent promise. He was there, willing to fight for her trust. One chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the city, Emily found herself returning to that bench. The world around her was alive with the sounds of laughter and chatter, but she felt isolated in her thoughts. The notes, the memories, and the betrayal circled in her mind like storm clouds. She needed to make sense of it all. As she sat there, lost in contemplation, a familiar silhouette approached. Jonathan, bundled in a thick coat, looked more vulnerable than she had ever seen him. There was no grand gesture this time, just a quiet determination in his eyes. He stopped a few feet away, giving her the space she had asked for. "Hey," he said softly, his voice barely rising above the rustling leaves. "Hey," Emily replied, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect, but the weight of their unresolved feelings hung heavily in the air. "I know it's been a while since we talked," he said, taking a cautious step closer. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're feeling." "I'm still processing everything," she admitted, her voice steady but strained. "You turned my world upside down, Jonathan. I need to understand why you did this." Jonathan nodded, his expression earnest. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could learn something valuable by stepping into your life, but I never intended for it to become a game. I got lost in my own desire to experience life outside my bubble, and in the process, I hurt the one person I came to care about the most." Emily felt a flicker of something deep within her. Understanding? Compassion? It was difficult to tell. "You still haven't answered my question. Why me? Why did you choose to approach me?" "Because you're strong," he replied, his voice unwavering. "You've overcome so much, and yet you still find joy in the little things. I wanted to see the world through your eyes, to understand what real struggle looks like. But it's become so much more than that. I never expected to fall for you, Emily. It happened when I least expected it, and now I'm scared of losing you." The vulnerability in his voice cut through her defenses, and she felt a rush of conflicting emotions. "You can't expect me to just forgive and forget," she said, her tone firm. "Trust isn't something you can buy or earn back overnight." "I know," Jonathan replied, his eyes pleading. "I'm not asking for forgiveness right now. I just want a chance to prove that I can be better, that I can be the partner you deserve. I want to learn from you, not just about your struggles, but about your dreams, your hopes." Emily hesitated, her heart battling with her mind. "What if I tell you my dreams and you decide they aren't worth your time? What if I'm just a charity case to you?" "No," he said passionately, stepping closer. "I would never see you that way. You're not a charity case. You're a person with depth, with aspirations. I want to support you, to stand beside you as you chase those dreams, not to overshadow them with my wealth, but to celebrate them with you." As she looked into his eyes, she saw sincerity, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the man she thought he was. "You have to understand, this is uncharted territory for me. I've built walls to protect myself from being hurt again. It's hard to let anyone in." "I get that, but I'm willing to take the risk," he said, his voice steady. "What if we start small? Let me take you out for coffee. No strings attached. Just two people getting to know each other without the weight of expectations." Emily studied him, searching for any sign of deceit, but all she found was a reflection of her own uncertainty. "Okay," she finally said, her voice wavering. "Just coffee, and I'm not making any promises." Jonathan broke into a wide smile, the relief washing over him. As we settled into the small cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped us, momentarily easing the tension that had built between us. The place was cozy, adorned with mismatched furniture and local artwork, a stark contrast to the polished luxury I had imagined Jonathan was accustomed to. He chose a table by the window, and as we sat down, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass, a woman caught between two worlds, one of struggle and one of privilege. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Jonathan said, his voice warm but laced with apprehension. He was nervous, and for the first time, I felt a sense of power in this dynamic. I wasn't just the subject of his experiment, I was a participant in this moment. "I didn't come here to make your life easier," I warned, stirring my coffee as if the motion could blend our realities. "I want you to understand what you're stepping into." "I wouldn't have it any other way," he replied, his eyes steady on mine. "I'm not interested in a fairy tale. I want to know the truth." With each sip of coffee, I found myself slowly peeling back the layers of my guarded heart. We talked about everything and nothing, the weather, our favorite books, the small joys of everyday life that I had learned to cherish. I shared stories of the people I met on the streets, their resilience and humor despite the harshness of their circumstances. Jonathan listened intently, his brow furrowing at the tales of hardship, but also lighting up at the moments of laughter and community. "You have such a beautiful perspective," he said, his admiration evident. "You see the world through a lens I've never had to look through. It's enlightening." "Enlightening because it makes you feel good?" I challenged, a hint of defensiveness creeping into my tone. "Or enlightening because it's a reality you never wanted to face?" He took a deep breath, his expression shifting to one of reflection. "You're right. I can't pretend that I understand what you go through. But I want to learn. I want to be a part of this world, not as a billionaire looking down, but as someone who genuinely cares." Our conversation flowed, and I began to see the cracks in his polished exterior. He wasn't just the wealthy man he appeared to be. He was a person grappling with his own identity and privilege. He spoke of pressure, expectations from his family, the suffocating nature of wealth that often felt like a cage. "I've always felt like an outsider," he confessed, his voice dropping. "No matter how much I have, I've never truly belonged anywhere. I thought that by living as you do, I could find some clarity, but instead, I found you." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. I could feel the tug of something deep within me, an unexpected connection that I had tried to deny. But could I really trust him? "Do you understand the implications of your actions?" I asked, my voice softening. "You came into my world with this experiment, and now you're asking me to let you in? What happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize you can't just dip in and out of my life?" Jonathan was silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. "That's a risk I'm willing to take. I don't want to just experience life. I want to be a part of it. I want to stand by you when it's hard, not just when it's convenient." I looked down at my coffee, the swirling liquid reflecting my turmoil. Was I really ready to open my heart again? The warmth of his words contrasted sharply with my fear of getting hurt. "It's not easy for me to believe that," I admitted. "Then let me show you," he said, leaning forward, his intensity palpable. "Let's take it one day at a time. No expectations, no timelines, just two people navigating this together." As I met his gaze, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. The walls I had built around my heart were still sturdy, but perhaps there was a crack, an opportunity for light to seep through. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "One day at a time." Jonathan smiled, and for the first time, it felt genuine. As we continued to talk, I realized that this wasn't just about him understanding me. It was also about me learning to trust again. The road ahead would be rocky, filled with uncertainties, but maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. The next few days unfolded like a delicate dance, each step tentative yet exhilarating. Jonathan and I began to carve out a routine, meeting in the mornings at the same cafe, where the barista had already grown accustomed to serving us. We exchanged stories, aspirations, and even fears, slowly building a bridge between our disparate worlds. On one particularly crisp morning, as autumn leaves swirled outside, Jonathan proposed an idea that sent a shiver down my spine. "What if we spent a day together in my world?" he suggested, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Not as an experiment, but as friends. I want you to see the life I lead, and maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why I'm here with you." My heart raced at the thought. I had spent years dodging the world he inhabited, the world of privilege that had always felt so foreign, yet tantalizing. "You really think I would be comfortable in that environment?" I asked, skepticism lacing my voice. "Why not? It's just a day. You can leave whenever you want," he replied, his tone reassuring. "I'll be there with you. You're not alone in this." His offer was tempting, yet it ignited a tempest of insecurities within me. What if I didn't fit in? What if I embarrassed him? But there was also a part of me that craved to see where he came from, to understand the world that had shaped him. After a long pause, I nodded. "Okay, let's do it." The next day, I found myself standing in front of a luxurious car, its sleek body glistening in the sun. Jonathan stepped out, looking every bit the billionaire he was, dressed in tailored attire that seemed to amplify the aura of confidence he exuded. "Ready?" he asked, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to inject some humor into my nerves. As we drove through the city, I watched the scenery shift from the worn-down streets I knew so well to the gleaming skyscrapers and manicured parks that felt like a different universe. Our first stop was a charity event he was hosting. As we entered the opulent venue, I was immediately hit by a wave of unfamiliarity. The air was thick with laughter, clinking glasses, and the sharp scent of expensive perfume. I clutched my purse tightly, feeling out of place among the elegantly dressed guests. Jonathan, however, was a beacon of warmth amidst the cold glamour, introducing me to his friends and colleagues with ease. "Everyone, this is Mia," he announced, his pride evident. "She's been teaching me what real strength looks like." The room fell silent for a moment, a mix of curiosity and judgment flickering across their faces. I could sense the whispers, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. What was a homeless woman doing here? Despite my discomfort, I took a deep breath and engaged with those around me, sharing snippets of my life, my hopes. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying the exchange, laughing along with the others, their questions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest. The conversations flowed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of belonging. As the evening progressed, Jonathan pulled me aside, his eyes searching mine. "How are you feeling?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I'm surprised," I admitted. "I didn't expect to enjoy this so much." His smile was infectious. "You belong here as much as anyone else, Mia. Don't ever forget that." But as the night wore on, I caught sight of a woman across the room, her expression cold and critical as she whispered to her companion, glancing at me with disdain. The warmth I had felt began to dissipate, replaced by the familiar sting of judgment. I could feel my insecurities creeping back in, threatening to overshadow the progress I had made. "Let's get out of here," I said abruptly, my heart racing. I needed fresh air, a moment to breathe without the weight of scrutiny pressing down on me. Jonathan nodded without hesitation, his understanding evident. We stepped outside, and the cool night air wrapped around us like a comforting blanket. I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my racing heart. "Hey," he said gently, stepping closer. "What's going on?" I don't like feeling like an outsider," I confessed, my voice trembling. "I thought I could handle this, but I'm not sure I belong here. I don't want to be a novelty to anyone." Jonathan's expression softened. "You're not a novelty to me, Mia. You're my friend, and the people who matter will see that." His words washed over me, but deep down, I still felt the weight of the world pressing against my chest. I don't want to lose myself in this experiment, Jonathan. I don't want you to see me as a project. You're not a project, he insisted, stepping closer, his voice low and steady. You are so much more than that. You have a strength that's magnetic, Mia. It draws people in, even when you don't see it. I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of insincerity, but all I found was unwavering support. The warmth of his words began to thaw the icy grip of self-doubt that had latched onto me. But what if they only see the surface? What if I never escape that label? Jonathan took a moment before responding, his brow furrowing in thought. Then we'll redefine what that label means together. You're not just a homeless woman. You're a survivor, a fighter. And maybe this experiment goes beyond just me helping you. Perhaps it's about showing them that everyone has a story worth telling. His conviction ignited a spark within me. You really believe that? I asked, my voice a mix of hope and disbelief. Absolutely. You have a perspective on life that many could only dream of understanding. Don't let anyone take that away from you. As we stood there, the city lights flickering in the distance, I felt my resolve strengthen. Maybe Jonathan's experiment was about more than just social dynamics. Perhaps it was an opportunity for me to find my voice in a world that had often silenced it. The next day, I decided to take a bold step. I reached out to a couple of the people I had met at the charity event, those who had shown genuine interest in my story. I wasn't just going to be a passive participant in this experiment. I would actively share my experiences and perspectives. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan and I continued to navigate the two worlds we belonged to. He introduced me to more of his friends and colleagues, while I shared tales of survival and resilience, of the beauty I found in the smallest moments amidst struggle. I could see the shift in their attitudes as they began to listen, to engage, and to see me as more than just a statistic. But not everything was smooth sailing. One afternoon, as we were preparing for another charity gala, I overheard a conversation between two of Jonathan's associates. "Why is he dragging that woman everywhere? It's embarrassing," one of them sneered. My heart sank as I felt the familiar sting of judgment creeping back in. "Maybe he thinks he's some kind of savior, giving her a taste of the good life," the other one scoffed. Their words felt like daggers, piercing through the bubble of confidence I had built. I wanted to confront them, to tell them how wrong they were, but instead I turned to Jonathan, who was adjusting his tie in the mirror. I swallowed hard, the urge to retreat bubbling within me. "Jonathan, do you really think this is helping?" He paused, meeting my gaze in the reflection. "What do you mean?" "I overheard some of your friends. They don't see me as an equal. They see me as a charity case." Jonathan's expression hardened, and for a moment he looked furious. "I'm sorry you had to hear that. They don't know you the way I do. They don't understand the strength it takes to survive." "But what if they never will?" I whispered, the vulnerability spilling from my heart. He stepped closer, his voice firm yet gentle. "Then we'll show them. It's not just about your story, it's about changing the narrative. We can do this together." With a newfound determination, I took a deep breath. I would not let the judgment of a few define me. I would use this opportunity to challenge perceptions, to show that there's more to every story than meets the eye. As we arrived at the gala, I felt the familiar pang of anxiety creep back in, but I pushed it aside. Tonight, I would speak not just for myself, but for everyone who had been dismissed or overlooked. I glanced at Jonathan, who offered me a reassuring nod, and a flicker of courage ignited within me. "Let's do this," I said, stepping into the room filled with bright lights and curious faces. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and as I moved through the crowd, I made it a point to engage with those who had been skeptical. I shared my story openly, weaving in the lessons I had learned through hardship, and to my surprise, I felt the walls of judgment slowly begin to crumble. With every conversation, I saw glimmers of understanding in their eyes. They began to see me not as a project or a novelty, but as a person with a rich tapestry of experiences. And in that moment, I realized that this was more than just Jonathan's social experiment. It was a chance for transformation, not just for me, but for everyone involved. As the night progressed, I felt a shift within myself. I was no longer the timid woman desperately seeking approval. I was a voice of change, a beacon of resilience. And as I caught Jonathan's eye across the room, I knew that together we were rewriting night's narrative. As I continued to speak, I noticed Jonathan moving through the crowd, his presence commanding attention. He engaged with people, drawing them into conversations about the issues I had brought to light. It was as if he was weaving a tapestry of connections, each thread representing a new understanding, a potential ally in the fight against stigma and ignorance. I shared stories about the nights spent under bridges, the kindness of strangers, and the small victories that kept my spirit alive. The more I spoke, the more I could see the transformation in their faces. The initial skepticism began to fade, replaced by a curiosity that sparked deeper questions. I could see them shifting from mere observers to participants in a dialogue that felt significant. One man approached me, his brow furrowed in thought. "How do you keep hope alive?" he asked, his voice low and earnest. I took a moment, letting his question sink in. "Hope is a choice," I replied, feeling the weight of every word. "It's not always easy, especially when the world seems set against you. But I learned that hope is like a flickering candle. Even in the darkest times, it can still shine bright if you nurture it." He nodded slowly, and I could tell my words resonated with him. It was moments like these that reminded me of the power of sharing my truth. Each conversation was a stepping stone, not just for me, but for others to reconsider their perceptions of homelessness and the human experience. As the gala progressed, I found myself surrounded by a diverse group of individuals, each eager to learn more. They shared their own stories of struggle, vulnerability, and resilience. There was a woman who had faced illness, a man who had lost his job, and another who had battled addiction. In those moments, we connected on a level that transcended our social standings. We were all human, each carrying our burdens. Jonathan rejoined me, a proud smile on his face. "You're incredible," he whispered, his admiration palpable. "I knew you had it in you." I felt a rush of warmth at his words. It was one thing to feel empowered within myself, but to have that reflected back from someone who had once been a stranger felt validating. "I couldn't have done this without you," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. As the night drew to a close, I realized that we had shifted the narrative. The conversations we had sparked were not just fleeting moments, they were seeds planted in fertile ground. People were leaving with new perspectives, and I couldn't help but feel a swell of hope for what this could mean. But just as I began to bask in the success of the evening, a familiar face emerged from the shadows. One of Jonathan's associates, the one who had been particularly harsh earlier. He approached with an air of arrogance, a smirk playing on his lips. "So, you think you're some kind of spokesperson now?" he taunted, his voice dripping with condescension. I took a deep breath, the sting of his words threatening to unravel the confidence I had built. But I refused to let him see me falter. "I'm not a spokesperson for anyone but myself," I said, my voice steady. "And tonight, I've shown that my story matters." He scoffed, looking around at the crowd that had gathered, clearly intrigued by our exchange. "This is all a performance, isn't it? You think they'll remember you tomorrow?" I held his gaze, unwavering. "Maybe not all of them, but some will, and that's enough, because change starts with just one person choosing to see the world differently." With that, I turned my back on him, rejoining Jonathan and the others who had come to my side, their expressions a mix of support and solidarity. I could feel the energy in the room shift, the collective realization that we were all part of a larger narrative, one that was still being written. As the gala came to an end, I stepped outside, the cool night air wrapping around me like a comforting embrace. Jonathan joined me, and together we stood in silence for a moment, reflecting on what had just transpired. "You were amazing," he finally said, breaking the stillness. "Thank you," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "I think we really did something tonight." "Yes, we did," he said, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. "But this is just the beginning. We have so much more to accomplish." And in that moment, I knew he was right. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, but I felt ready to face them. With Jonathan by my side, I wasn't just a participant in his experiment. I was a catalyst for change. Not just for myself, but for countless others whose voices had yet to be heard. Together, we would rewrite the narrative, one conversation at a time. As the days turned into weeks, the impact of that gala rippled through my life in unexpected ways. I found myself speaking at local community centers, sharing my story with anyone willing to listen. Each time I stood before an audience, I felt the same familiar flicker of hope igniting within me. The more I spoke, the more I realized how deeply I connected with others, how our shared humanity could bridge the gaps that society had tried so hard to widen. Jonathan became my partner in this endeavor. He worked tirelessly to amplify my voice, connecting me with various organizations that aim to combat homelessness and promote social awareness. We mapped out a plan, envisioning workshops and community dialogues that would encourage others to share their experiences, just as I had. I was no longer just a homeless woman. I was a beacon of resilience, a testimony to the power of hope. One afternoon, as I sat in a cozy cafe with Jonathan, he brought up an idea that had been percolating in his mind. "What if we organized a larger event?" he suggested, enthusiasm radiating from him. "Something that could draw in a bigger crowd, maybe even local media attention. It could be a platform for voices like yours." I leaned in, intrigued. "What are you thinking? A conference?" "Something like that, but with a twist," he replied, his eyes alight with inspiration. "We could include art, music, and storytelling, a festival of hope where people can express themselves and share their journeys. It could be transformative." The idea struck a chord within me. I could see it clearly in my mind, a vibrant gathering filled with laughter, tears, and connection. "Yes, let's do it!" I exclaimed, feeling a surge of excitement course through me. We spent the next few weeks planning, reaching out to artists, musicians, and speakers from all walks of life. The response was overwhelming. People were eager to participate, to share their art and stories. I felt a sense of community building around us, a network of individuals united by a common goal. But not everyone was on board. As the festival date approached, I received messages from skeptics, including that same associate of Jonathan's who had taunted me at the gala. He seemed determined to undermine our efforts, questioning the impact of our work and dismissing our idea as naive. Each message felt like a challenge, an invitation to doubt myself. Yet, instead of allowing it to deter me, I used it as fuel. In our meetings, I reminded Jonathan and the team that change often meets resistance. "We have to stay true to our vision," I said firmly. "This festival isn't just about us. It's about giving a platform to those who feel invisible." As the day of the festival arrived, the energy was electric. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music. I stood backstage, taking it all in. Artists were setting up their displays, musicians were tuning their instruments, and speakers were rehearsing their lines. It was a beautiful chaos, a manifestation of hope brought to life. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. As I stepped onto the stage, the crowd fell silent, and I could see the faces of people who had come to listen, some familiar, others new. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. "Thank you all for being here today," I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "This festival is a celebration of our stories, our struggles, and our triumphs. We are not defined by our circumstances, but rather by our resilience and our capacity to hope." As I shared my journey, I saw heads nodding in understanding, tears glistening in the eyes of many. I spoke not just for myself, but for everyone who had felt marginalized or silenced. I could feel the connection between us, an invisible thread weaving our experiences together. When I finished, the audience erupted in applause. I stepped back, overwhelmed by the response. Jonathan was there, beaming with pride, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was what it meant to be a catalyst for change. The festival continued, filled with art, music, and heartfelt storytelling. In those moments, we all became part of something greater than ourselves. I realized that hope was not just an individual endeavor. It thrived in community, in shared experiences. Together, we were rewriting the narrative, one story at a time. As the festival unfolded, I was swept away by the stories that surrounded me. Each voice added a layer to the tapestry we were weaving together. I moved from one tent to another, listening to artists share their creative processes, musicians pouring their hearts into every note, and speakers who revealed their vulnerabilities in the most touching ways. It was a reminder that everyone had a story worth telling, no matter how small or grand. I stumbled upon a young woman named Mia who was painting a mural that depicted a phoenix rising from ashes. Her passion was palpable as she explained what the phoenix symbolized to her, a representation of rebirth and resilience. "I used to feel like I was trapped in my past," she told me, her eyes sparkling with determination. "But art saved me. I want others to see that they can rise too." Her words resonated deeply, and I wished I had a canvas of my own to paint my journey, to express the myriad of emotions swirling within me. Later, I found myself at a small stage where a group of musicians was playing a soulful melody. The lead singer, a man named Carlos, shared that he had once lived on the streets, his music being his only solace. "This is for everyone who feels lost," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. "Music has the power to heal, to connect us all." I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me, feeling the weight of our shared struggles lift, if only for a moment. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festival, I took a moment to reflect. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as strangers became friends, laughing and sharing their stories. It was a beautiful sight, one that filled my heart with hope. This was not just an event, it was a movement, a gathering of souls seeking connection and healing. Suddenly, I noticed a figure moving through the crowd, someone I hadn't expected to see. Jonathan's skeptical associate, Mark. He was weaving between groups, observing the interactions with a furrowed brow. I felt a rush of apprehension. What was he doing here? Was he here to critique, to undermine our efforts further? But then I saw something I hadn't anticipated. He was listening. I watched as he approached Mia's mural, his expression shifting from skepticism to contemplation. The vibrant color seemed to spark something within him. I could see him engage with the artists, nodding along as they shared their visions and stories. It was as if the festival was breaking down the walls he had built around himself. As the night deepened, I was beckoned to the main stage once more. Jonathan stood beside me, his eyes filled with encouragement. "Let's invite everyone to share their stories now," he proposed. "The stage is open for anyone who wants to speak." A wave of excitement swept over the crowd, and one by one, people stepped forward. Some spoke of their struggles with addiction, others shared tales of loss and despair, while many celebrated their triumphs and the paths they had carved. Each story was met with applause, with cheers of support that reverberated in the air. I felt a surge of courage. I had shared my journey, but now I wanted to hear from others. I took the microphone and called out, "If you have a story to share, come up. This is our moment." To my surprise, a middle-aged man approached the stage, his hands trembling slightly. "I've been homeless for years, but today I feel seen," he confessed, his voice cracking. "I've been afraid to speak out, thinking no one would care. But seeing all of you here, I realize I'm not alone." His vulnerability resonated deeply, and the crowd erupted in cheers, welcoming him as he spoke his truth. The night continued, filled with heartfelt stories and shared laughter. It was a cathartic release for many, a reminder that our struggles were valid and that we had the power to reclaim our narratives. I felt a sense of unity growing stronger with each voice that was shared. As the festival drew to a close, I stood backstage again, overwhelmed by what we had created together. Jonathan approached me, his face glowing with pride. "I knew this would be special, but I didn't expect it to be this transformative," he said, his voice filled with emotion. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Neither did I, but this is just the beginning, isn't it?" "Yes," he agreed, his eyes sparkling with determination. "We need to keep this momentum going. We can take these stories beyond today, into the community, into the media. We can change perceptions." As I looked out at the crowd one last time, I realized that this festival had not only changed the lives of those who attended, it had changed me. I had gone from being a homeless woman to a catalyst for change, and I knew that I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Together, we were weaving a new narrative, one filled with hope, resilience, and the undeniable power of our shared humanity. As the festival lights dimmed and the crowd began to disperse, I felt an unfamiliar sense of exhilaration coursing through my veins. It was as if the stories we shared had ignited a spark within me, one that I hadn't realized was missing. Jonathan and I stood together, watching as people exchanged hugs and promises to reconnect. It was a tapestry of connections being woven, threads of humanity intertwining in a way I had never witnessed before. "What now?" I asked Jonathan, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt surreal to think about the future after such a monumental day. "We take this energy and channel it into something bigger," he replied, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I want to start a community initiative, something that not only provides resources, but also a platform for people like you to continue sharing their stories." A wave of excitement washed over me. "You mean like a storytelling project?" "Exactly. We can create workshops, invite local artists, and even partner with shelters and organizations. We'll build a network where voices can be amplified. This is about creating a movement, not just a moment." The vision he painted felt electric, and I could see it materializing in my mind. I could almost hear the laughter that would echo through the walls of a community center, the sound of pens scratching on paper as stories came to life. "We need to involve the people who spoke today," I insisted, my heart racing. "They have so much to offer, and I can help facilitate their participation." Jonathan nodded, clearly impressed. "You're already thinking like a leader. I knew you had it in you." As we gathered our belongings, I spotted Mark in the distance, still lingering near the mural. I felt an urge to speak with him, to see if the festival had shifted something in his perspective. "I'll catch up with you later," I said to Jonathan, and with that, I made my way toward Mark. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, "what did you think of the event?" He turned to me, and for a moment, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. "I didn't expect it to be so impactful," he admitted, his tone more open than I'd ever heard. "I came here ready to critique, but I ended up moved. Everyone had such powerful stories." I smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie growing. "It's powerful when we realize we're not alone, isn't it?" "Yes," he replied, his defenses seeming to lower. "I've always viewed the world through this lens of skepticism. But you've changed something in me. I think I want to help." A rush of hope surged within me. "You'd be a valuable asset to the initiative we're planning. We need people who can advocate for us, who understand both sides." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll think about it. I want to understand more." With our conversation lingering in the air, I returned to Jonathan, who was speaking with a group of artists. "I just had a chat with Mark," I said, excitement bubbling in my voice. "He's considering getting involved." "Really?" Jonathan raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile creeping onto his lips. "That's promising. If we can get someone like him on board, it would be a game changer." As we finalized our plans for the coming weeks, I felt a sense of purpose settling in my chest. The festival had sparked something greater than I could have imagined, and I was determined to keep the momentum alive. Days turned into weeks, and our initiative began to take shape. We held meetings in local coffee shops, brainstorming ideas and inviting community members to contribute. I felt a sense of belonging, surrounded by people who were passionate about making a difference. Each meeting revealed new layers of stories and experiences, and I cherished the moments when we all shared our vulnerabilities. Then came the day when we secured a small space for our first workshop. The adrenaline was palpable as we set up chairs and arranged the room, preparing for our inaugural gathering. I stood at the front, my heart racing as I welcomed everyone. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. "Today is about sharing, connecting, and empowering one another. We all have stories that deserve to be told." As I looked around the room, I saw familiar faces. The man who had spoken at the festival, the artist who had painted the mural, and even Mark, who had decided to join us after all. That day marked the beginning of something beautiful. We created a safe space where people could express themselves freely, share their struggles, and inspire one another. Through storytelling, we began to heal, and slowly we started to change the narrative around homelessness in our community. One voice at a time, we were rewriting our stories, transforming despair into hope, isolation into connection. And as I stood there, surrounded by the warmth of shared experiences, I knew that this was the beginning of a transformation that extended far beyond the walls of that workshop. Word began to spread, and soon we were inundated with requests from people wanting to join us. It felt surreal to witness our initiative grow, evolving from an idea born in the shadows of skepticism to a beacon of hope for many. As the weeks passed, more voices joined our chorus. Each new story added depth to our tapestry, weaving together the experiences of people from diverse backgrounds. I became acutely aware of the power of listening, how it could validate someone's experience and foster a sense of community. We all had scars, but together we were crafting a narrative of resilience. Mark, who had once stood aloof, became one of the most vocal advocates among us. He shared his journey of grappling with privilege and the weight of societal expectations. His vulnerability inspired others to open up, and the discussions grew richer. He often facilitated dialogues that challenged us to confront our biases and assumptions. It was a remarkable transformation, and I felt honored to witness it. One afternoon, as we sat in a circle discussing the importance of representation, a woman named Lily spoke up. She had been homeless for several years and had an incredible story of survival. "When people see me, they see my situation, not my strength," she said, her voice unwavering. "I want to change that perception. We need to show the world that we are more than just our struggles." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I realized that our workshops were not just a platform for sharing, they were a movement to reclaim our identities. We were tired of being defined by our circumstances, tired of being invisible. Inspired by Lily's passion, I proposed that we organize an event to showcase our stories publicly, a performance that would highlight our resilience and creativity. The idea ignited a fire in everyone. We brainstormed about formats, from spoken word poetry to visual art displays. It felt exhilarating to imagine our stories reaching a wider audience, challenging misconceptions and fostering empathy. We decided to call it Voices Unbound, a fitting title that encapsulated our mission to break free from societal constraints. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of activity as we prepared for the event. We rehearsed, crafted art installations, and coordinated logistics. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety, wondering how the community would respond. Would they truly listen? Would they see us? On the day of the performance, the venue was packed. The air buzzed with anticipation as we set up the stage adorned with our artwork, each piece reflecting the stories we had shared. I stood backstage, my heart racing, as I watched familiar faces fill the seats. This was our moment, and I wanted more than anything for it to resonate. When it was finally time to take the stage, I felt a surge of adrenaline. As we introduced ourselves, the applause felt like an affirmation of our worth. One by one, we shared our stories. Some were heart-wrenching, others uplifting, but all were authentic. I spoke about my journey from the streets to this stage, how I had fought against the tide of despair and found strength in my community. As the final act concluded, the audience erupted into applause. I looked out into the crowd, and for the first time, I felt seen. People were not merely clapping for our stories, they were acknowledging our humanity. We had transcended the labels that society had placed upon us. After the event, as we mingled with the attendees, something extraordinary happened. Many members of the community approached us, sharing how moved they were by our narratives. They expressed a desire to get involved, to support us in our mission. It was a pivotal moment. What had started as a social experiment orchestrated by a billionaire had blossomed into something far more significant. It was a movement that challenged perceptions and fostered understanding. In the weeks that followed, our initiative gained momentum. We partnered with local businesses, secured funding for future workshops, and even began plans for a second event. What started as a small gathering had transformed into a powerful platform for change. I realized that the billionaire's experiment had inadvertently ignited a revolution of empathy, one that had the potential to ripple out far beyond our community. As I reflected on the journey, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. I had entered this experiment as a homeless woman, unsure of my worth. Now I stood as a leader, guiding others toward their own transformation. Together, we were redefining what it meant to be seen, to belong, and to inspire change. The future was bright, and it was ours to shape. As our movement grew, it became evident that we were not just sharing our stories, we were building a community. Each workshop, each event was a step toward dismantling the walls that society had built around us. We were no longer just voices in the background. We had become the heartbeat of a conversation that demanded to be heard. Our stories were intertwined, each thread contributing to the rich tapestry of resilience and hope. One evening, as I sat with Lily and a few others of a local cafe, I could hardly believe how far we had come. The warmth of camaraderie enveloped us as we shared laughter and plans for our upcoming initiatives. We spoke about expanding Voices Unbound to neighboring cities, bringing our message of empowerment to more people. The cafe buzzed with energy, and I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over me. But with growth came challenges. Not everyone in the community welcomed our initiative with open arms. There were whispers of skepticism, and some questioned our motives. They believed that we were merely seeking attention or exploiting our struggles for fame. I had to remind myself that change was never easy, and with each step forward, there would always be resistance. Yet I also knew that our authenticity was our greatest weapon. We decided to address the skepticism head-on. During one of our workshops, I proposed an open forum where community members could voice their concerns and ask questions directly. It was a bold move, but I felt it was necessary. We needed to bridge the gap of misunderstanding, to show that we weren't just a collection of stories. We were individuals with hopes, dreams, and the capacity for growth. The forum was intense. People expressed their doubts, but we listened. We shared our experiences honestly, and as the dialogue unfolded, something remarkable happened. The tension began to dissolve, and empathy took its place. Community members began to see the humanity behind our struggles, and we found common ground. In the weeks that followed, I realized that the billionaire's experiment had not only transformed us, but had also sparked a desire for others to engage with the issues we faced. We began collaborating with local organizations, expanding our outreach efforts to include educational programs that addressed homelessness, mental health, and community involvement. We were becoming a catalyst for broader social change, and it was exhilarating. As the months passed, I found myself reflecting on that pivotal day when we first took the stage at Voices Unbound.
It was more than just a performance. It was a declaration of our existence. We had shattered the glass ceilings of invisibility, and now we were shining brightly, illuminating pathways for others who felt lost in the shadows. I met with the billionaire a few times during this period.
Each meeting felt surreal. Here was a man who had initiated this journey, yet he seemed humbled by the outcome. He had expected to gain insights for his social experiment, but he found himself transformed by our courage and strength. We discussed future partnerships, and he expressed a genuine interest in supporting our initiatives. It was a rare dynamic, and I found it fascinating how a simple decision could lead to a profound impact on so many lives. As the year came to a close, we organized a celebration to reflect on our journey. We invited the community to join us, to share in our triumphs and dreams for the future. The air was filled with laughter, music, and stories. I stood before the crowd, looking out at the faces of those who had once been strangers, now friends and allies. In that moment, I understood the true essence of our movement. We weren't just fighting against the stigma of homelessness. We were creating a narrative of hope, resilience, and unity. Together, we had crafted a new identity, one that was not defined by our circumstances, but by our collective strength. As I spoke, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had come so far from the woman who had once felt invisible. Now I was a beacon of hope, inspiring others to embrace their stories and reclaim their identities. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities. Our movement was alive, and its heartbeat echoed through every life it touched. And in that moment of connection, I knew we had changed everything. Not just for ourselves, but for a world that desperately needed to see beyond the surface. We were not just participants in a social experiment. We were agents of change, and our voices would continue to resonate long after the curtains fell.